looking intently at an ear, that weird appendage, what is an eye, or a pair of lips, or an ear? Suddenly you see, and it's not an eye or an ear, but a little universe composed of the most extraordinary elements. One is astounded by the metamorphoses a human countenance undergoes. Rabelais, for all your ills, I give you laughter. To laugh at yourself is the most important thing, not at others, but at yourself. Huh? That's the great thing. The day when I graduated from high school, and we were all asked, what would we like to be? I had no idea what I wanted to be, so I said, I think I'm going to be a clown. The symbol of man's suffering on earth, you might say, and his conquest over it, too, you know. But I was saying a great truth, because at bottom, I think there is a great deal of the clown in me. I'm a sort of a schizoid type who laughs and cries at the same time. My book is the man that I am, the confused man, the negligent man, the lusty, obscene, boisterous, thoughtful, scrupulous, lying, diabolically truthful man that I am. Jakob Gimpel, world-renowned pianist and dear friend. Da 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 da.
One call, an answer.
Music, you sound a note, you know. That leads to the next note. One thing determines the next thing, do you see? And when you come down to it philosophically, in a Zen thing, like Zen, the idea is, you know, you live from moment to moment. So in doing that, this moment decides the next step. You shouldn't be 5 steps ahead, only the very next one. And if you can keep to that, you're always all right. See, but people are thinking too far ahead. And sidelines and all that. Do you know what I mean? Think only what's right there. Do only what's right under your nose to do, huh? You know? It's such a simple thing that people can't do it, you know. Buford Delaney, the amazing and invariable Buford Delaney, the nearest to a saint that any artist can be. Anais Nin, author of the now famous diary, an inspiration to and a protectress of so many striving artists, including yours truly, Henry Miller.
I just finished this book about writing and the writers, and I said that if they would trust, that people could do this if they trusted the artist to do the dreaming, you see, and then instead of taking drugs, say, they watch a painting for a long time, or watched a mobile for a long time, or trusted the artist, or looked at a, you know, a painting very deeply, that they would be set off on their own dreaming.
Lawrence Clark Powell, librarian and writer, whom I first met in Dijon when I was an instructor in the Lycée Carnot, a very dear friend. and a very understanding critic of my work.
God, it's a sheet of wallpaper. Where did you buy these papers, Henry? Where did you get these papers?
God, no.
This must be the cast of characters for what? Days? Capricorn. Capricorn plan.
Yeah.
It's a plan for the Ville de Capricorn. Ideas, obsession, styles.
Style, let's see. Now that one.
Dostoevsky for Xerxes Society.
See, you get me? You see what a cunning bastard and what shall I say, a cheat and whatnot. Still, I'm thinking what style I can use. Not my own. Do you understand? Not me.
Hampson,
Holy
Harris,
God.
Tagore, Spengler, Anatole France, Somerset Maugham, Dos Passos, Ingersoll and Tolstoy, Romain Rolland, Kropotkin, Sinclair Lewis for rantings.
For rantings. Ranting, you know.
Dreiser for desertion theme. Sherwood Anderson for yearnings and introspection.
How do you like that? That hits me. I don't remember all this.
Henry Miller.
Yeah.
What for what? What was left?
Yeah. What do I call? Yeah. I write the coda.
Yeah, the coda, the index.
So I said, I'm going to give you the original picture, which is 2 meters by 1.50 meters. He says, where will that...
Gregory Michon's, one of the first painters I met in Paris. A man thoroughly dedicated to his work. Of course, listen, in writing, I think that one writes to discover himself. In this thing, I'm just playing, that's all, don't you know? To me, I attach no importance to what I do in painting, none at all. I'm just having a good time. And I think this is a very important thing in life, that people learn how to play, and that they make life a game rather than a struggle, you know, for goals. But the playing is so much more important. Lawrence Durrell, author of the Alexandria Quartet and other well-known books, came to see me in Paris at about the age of 23 or 4 as a young writer, and who has remained an everlasting friend. Sidney Omar, a friend of some years standing now, quite famous as an astrologer.
Take a horoscope or take the birth data.
I've always been interested in the occult because I have never been able to accept this world. I know that there is another world behind it, which is the real world. The occult embraces many domains, from the gift of prophecy to palmistry, the reading of tarot cards. My palm has been read. It's unusual that the heart and the headlines run together. They shouldn't. They should be separate. They should go off. And my heart and head go together. Now, what does it mean? I don't know. My interest is not so much in the knowable as in the unknowable, which is infinite. Alfred Perlez, whom I often refer to as Joey, my boon companion throughout the 10 years stay in Paris, author of a number of books in French, German, and English, and who saved my life when I was at the point of returning to America or committing suicide. Did you ever think about me as a kind of a split personality? It's a feeling of being split. I can see 2 ways, or many ways often, don't you know? If I have to think about something and a problem or something, I am not a logical thinker, and my feelings dictate my thinking a great deal, don't you know? Brassai, world-famous photographer, for me, the eye of Paris. Also writes, paints, and sculpts. Joe Gray. Joe, this is our 3rd session in this historic film. I better be good.
Better.
The first one was at your pad, you remember?
Right.
And I posed you as the veteran of the screen, do you remember? But you had a couple of broads there, and I think they got drunk and ruined it.
Yeah, where they shoot the picture.
Ahab, Moab, Babab, all those out. The second time you were the ex-pug, you remember, with Tommy Palmer,
right,
the
manager's home.
manager. What names, these names.
Yeah.
This is another whole world, you know, huh? The names. I think I've got you now in really your real role in life. Now, I always told you that if you hadn't been an actor or a fighter, prize fighter, you could have been a great teacher. You come like out of a rabbinical tradition, and you're a bit of a psychoanalyst or a psychiatrist, you're a healer, you like that. Dr. Gray, I called you in today because I have a strange case. He's got strange symptoms. For example, he's complaining about arthritis. Well, to begin with, he's only 20 or 21, a little young to have arthritis all through his body. In another 6 months, at this rate, he would only be able to crawl on the floor, do you see? I just can't envisage such a situation. I could heal arthritis or earaches or something like that, or stuttering. But if a man is lovesick, I don't get very far with him, generally speaking, because I don't like to go back to the womb and all that business, you know. I like to keep it within the realm of, immediate circumstances. What is the name again? What is it? Was it Tom or Tom, was it?
Tom Schiller.
Tom Schiller. Is that your pseudonym or is that your real name?
This is my real name.
That's your real name. You were born that way?
Yes.
You weren't baptized?
No.
No, all right. That already tells us something. Well, you're circumcised?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tom, don't you think that this is a very common thing with
young people? This unrequited love on the part of the parents?
Yo, sure.
Lack of affection?
Everybody.
It's almost every case today, isn't it?
Yes.
And don't you find, Tom, often that the children who think that way are really mistaken about their parents, that their parents do love them,
Yeah.
but perhaps don't show it in the way that the child expects?
Was there any other children in the family?
Yeah, I have a brother, younger brother.
Does he get more favor with your parents?
No. Now, I don't think that's the thing. I mean,
Listen, young man, I must tell you, first of all, it's not your place to say what
First
you
of all,
think. We
you
don't
sound
know.
like
we
you're
don't want to
analyzing
know what
me.
you
Next
think.
thing you know,
We
you
are
got
the
me on
ones.
the couch.
Yeah.
We're working on you.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
He's
The
on his
moment
way.
that he realizes that everything is in his hands, and he doesn't blame his parents or the world or
Right.
society, he's a long way already toward the goal, see? The main thing now is for him to assume this responsibility completely, don't you know? That he can say confidently to himself, he doesn't need anybody. I alone can do it. I alone am responsible for everything that happens to me. What is your
In other
thought
words,
on
he has
that?
to accept his
Yes.
situation.
Right. Don't you think we have to consider that point when we ask him to love without being loved? This is a most difficult thing. In fact, I, Doctor, with all my wisdom and experience, I can't do it. If you go about the world, when you find a man who has no problems, come to me and give me his name and address. I would like to meet him.
But,
you know?
but why don't you get down here?
All right, I will. You want to give me a little...
Boy, there's a switch if
Oh,
I ever saw one.
Yes.
There's a switch.
Doctor,
The patient
cure
becomes
himself.
a doctor,
All
and
right.
a master becomes a patient.
Right.
Well,
Can I get up there?
Okay, what size shoe was that?
I've got the real arthritis.
Yeah, okay.
I got real arthritis.
You do? Are you sure it's real?
Yes, this I'm quite convinced of, but mine comes about because of age, I think, you know.
Are you certain?
Age and abuse of the bodily functions, you know. My stomach gets cramped and my toes curl up and I can't straighten them out.
Is that right?
I get insomnia very frequently.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
well, tell me, for someone who strikes me as finding the
Answers.
the answers of life, to giving into life, flowing
Yeah.
with life, whatever.
Yeah.
Why would you have insomnia?
Titike. Owen Wing. I was in love with a girl, Japanese girl. Uh-huh. Now, and this, this is if I step on your foot and I say, forgive me. Sumimasen? I know that one. I'm sorry. And then I had difficulty going to sleep. So then I began doing these things, with her in mind. I do something. You see a lot of writing on them. Rather crazy things. Words popped into my head. Japanese nightmare. Style Scorpio. Scorpio was her sign. My first big memory. My mother did the first terrible thing for which I never forgave her. My mother had a wart. And she said to me, Henry, I'm only 4 years old. I'm sitting in this little chair. What should I do? I says, cut it off with scissors. 2 days after that, she got blood poison. And she said, and you told me to cut it off. And bang, bang, she slaps me for the punishment, for telling her to do this. How do you like a mother who'll do that? I lived, you see, in Brooklyn. This is now 85th Street, Yorkville section. I'm, say, 8 to 12 years old this period. When I come there to visit my cousin, he says to his friends one by one, this is Henry Miller from Brooklyn. And they almost bowed to me, the boy. I'm made already the leader of the gang because I'm from another neighborhood. They bring me things that they steal. I fight with them in rock fights. We have fights in the lots, the open, with rocks. And I tell a story there how I believe I killed one boy, I never went to the police, naturally. And I came home, remember, and got the rye bread from his mother and all that. It was a wonderful, tender neighborhood, tender with violence. Again, American. Such warmth and then this ferocity for no reason. I can't understand. Oh, my mother, she was a peculiar woman, The neighbors said she loved me. They said that she was really greatly fond of me and all that. I never felt any warmth from her. She never kissed me, never hugged me. I don't ever remember going to her and putting my arms around her, That was a big loss. I didn't know that mothers did that till one day I visit a friend of mine, his house. We're 12 years old, and I go home with him, and his mother, they were English, and I hear the mother's voice. Jackie, oh, Jackie, she says, darling, how are you? How have you been? Put your arms around him, and kiss him. She says, I never heard that kind of language. Do you see? That even that tone of voice, new to me. Oh, yes. Because in that stupid German neighborhood, they were great disciplinarians. They were brutal people. All my boyfriends, when I go home with them, they would say, defend me, help me. If my father starts to hit me, grab something and let's run, Huh? Yeah, it was all brutality and discipline, see. Crazy. The street of early sorrows. Before that was the good time of my life, up to 9 years of age, in the worst neighborhood of all, in the worst possible neighborhood. That was my golden period, on the streets. Boys who later went to the penitentiary and, committed all kinds of crimes. They were my great friends and my heroes, and to this day I admire them, Yeah. Well, my sister was a moron and was born half-witted. You see, she has the intelligence of a child of about 8 or 10. And she was a great
burden in my life because I had to defend her when the kids called Crazy Loretta, you know. Made fun of her, pulled her hair, and oh, terrible. And I'm always chasing these kids and fighting with them, you know. And there was never any conversation. And, you know, she drove me crazy. She can talk, but she talks a mile a minute about trivia. It makes sense, but it's about little things, a little cut here, pinpoint, you know, a leaf on it. Do you see what I mean? No continuous thing either. After an hour with her, I was nearly nuts, though, batty, you know, with this conversation. And then she had the faculty of crying easily over nothing, maybe out of joy, but silent tears. She didn't cry loudly, silent. They just flew down like that, poured down her face. And you never knew why. You'd ask her why. She might say, I'm happy. You know, it was, very emotional. As a little boy, my mother says to me one day, you know, while teaching, the kid couldn't go to school because she couldn't learn. They sent her home. And then my mother starts to teach her. And my mother couldn't teach her. My mother was terrible. She used to crack her, hit her. And she'd say, how much is 2 times 2? And my sister would be frantic. She'd say, 5. No. 7. No. 3. You know, just wild. Bang. My mother hitting her like that. And my mother would turn to me and say, why did I have to bear this cross? What did I do to be punished? Ask me, a little boy. Why did God punish me, you know? You can see what kind of a mother this was, huh? Stupid, huh? Terrible, terrible. My father, my relations with him, they were rather cool while I worked in the tailor shop because my mother had hoped that I would prevent him from drinking, see, keep tabs on him and all that, but I couldn't. And of course, he bothered me, he disturbed me, being drunk every day, coming home drunk, quarrels and all that. It was only later, he was always very wonderful. And he always believed in what I was doing, though he never read anything, you know, huh? He said, go to it, go ahead, and all right, hope you make out. Then, of course, he became ill. He gave up drink suddenly, all of a sudden like that. And that was his downfall. When he did that, he became ill. Up to then, he had been in good health. And he was a man who had great friends. Everyone spoke highly of him. What a wonderful man he was, you know. In the tailor shop, I hated the business. I had no interest in that at all. You know, I couldn't see myself becoming a tailor. All that I got out of that 2, 3, or 4 years, I don't know how long it was a knowledge, a feel of woolens and silks, what they, you know, good material, and fancy vest buttons. Jesus, you know, they used to wear vests with fancy buttons in those days. But I know a good piece of material when I touch it. And I know when a suit fits properly and all that. Well, I discovered New York. Well, I had lived in it, you know, so much all my life. And then my great discovery of New York was when I was with the Western Union. 4.5 years, employment manager. And after I finished my day's work, I would eat dinner with the detective of the company. He'd come at that hour. And we'd go out together to visit the telegraph offices, and we'd be looking for crooks and runaway boys and all that. That brought us into every nook and cranny there in New York. Every dive, the Bowery, the East Side, the Upper, the Harlem, everything. I knew it all like a book, you know. And I was getting home then. I was due at work every morning at 8 o'clock. I seldom arrived at 8, but when I did, there'd be a whole mob waiting for me in the anteroom, you know, waiting to be hired. Because we had largely the scum, the riffraff, don't you know.
And among them, there were great kids. Lots of them were crooks. I didn't mind it too much. But they're all liars. Nearly all young kids are liars, you know. It's amazing. And the best, the model ones who look so beautiful and pious, you know, and good, they were the worst ones always, you know, huh? See, I visited at night their homes, you know, often to find out what was what. Kids would come, you know, begging for the job and then saying, but we have nothing to eat at home. My father is ill and this and that. I'd go there. Then I'd try to get the charitable organizations interested. And that took so long. I was paying out of my money. I'd give them, you know, keep them going, do you see? Then I borrowed from my associates in the office. I was always in debt the whole time at that job. I owed everybody, helping out these kids, yeah. The Xerxes Society is a group of friends. It was a social and an athletic club. We staged running matches, boxing matches, very much interested in fight game. When sweet caporals were all the vogue, they gave out little picture cards of soubrettes from the burlesque and of fighters. And among them, my heroes, Corbett and John L. Sullivan, Terry McGovern, Jack Johnson. I was crazy about the bicycle and crazy enough to pace the 6-day riders. This happened from Prospect Park on the beautiful gravel path for bicyclists, cyclists. 6 miles, right down to Coney Island, to the water. We set out leisurely and get faster and faster. And since I was a kid and had the heart and I could spare the strength, they used me, you know. All this time, of course, in the back of my head, I am a writer who's never writing. I had made one attempt to write with a little broken pencil once, can you imagine? And I wrote a page and gave it up. I said I never would be able to write. Well, but nevertheless, it was in there, in me, and stories and novels I'm writing as I walk, dialogues with characters. And I can remember it. I could say I wrote several books in this period that I worked for my father. Because I did the same thing at night. I walked back again down to that station, do you know? This meant I walked through the Bowery, too, part of the way, do you know? And Union Square and all those... Madison Square Garden, which was a beautiful building then. Do you remember? And then on that walk also, I stopped at a certain shop, a framing shop, where I got interested in painting. Because there I saw my first Japanese prints. I used to stand and I saw reproductions of Chagall, you know, and Utrio and Matisse and all that. That was my first, really, beginnings of interest in painting, do you see? Now, all this time, you know, I think that I'll never be a writer, but I was reading all the current writers of the day, don't you know? For instance, I remember that John Dos Passos was quite a name, I think, then already, but he was not much older than me, or maybe same age. And already he had made it. He had been in the war, and he had written a book about the war, do you recall? And I used to read these men. I say to myself, Jesus, I think I could do as well as that, you know? But never do it. And I'm trying to think then, how did I really? Oh, yes, this is a long while then afterwards. Let's see. All right. While still working for my father, I married. My first marriage, you remember. Had a child. And then at night I would come home. I had that big desk that you're curious about. This roll-top desk, you know. It was a pigeonhole desk, remember? This was the desk which had been in the old man's tailoring establishment for the last 50 years, which had given birth to many builds and many groans, which had housed strange souvenirs in its compartments, and which finally I had filched from him when he was ill and away from the establishment.
And now it stood in the middle of the floor in our huge, lugubrious parlor on the 3rd floor of a respectable brownstone house in the dead center of the most respectable neighborhood in Brooklyn. And I put all the extra chairs we had around it in a circle, and then I sat down comfortably, and I put my feet on the desk and dreamed of what I would write if I could write. All the pigeonholes were empty, and all the drawers were empty. There wasn't a thing on the desk or in it except a sheet of white paper on which I found it impossible to put so much as a pothook.
I would sit there then and write at night, you know. It was nothing any good. I don't think I never even tried to sell any of that stuff, you know. But I was married a few years, I guess, when finally I ran into this Mona in my books in the dance hall, and we were caught in bed one morning when I thought my wife had gone on a vacation. She'd only done that to trap me, and there she found me in bed, you see, in my own house with witnesses and everything. So I left her immediately, went to live with June, Mona. After this period with my father, somehow or other, I don't know how I got out of it all. Maybe he had to give up business. I forget it exactly now at this minute. Anyhow, then I had a number of jobs in between. Like I was assistant editor to a mail order house, like the Charles Williams. I was the editor of that big catalog, you know, they put out. And I was fired one day because I was caught typing out from Nietzsche's Antichrist, you know, while working on work time. You know, the big vice president came through and saw me, fired. So then when I go to live, June and I lived together, she still worked at the dance hall and used to say to me, look, give up that job, start to write, you know. She pushed me into it. And one day I did quit. I quit like that. Just came in the office one morning. There were 40 or 50 applicants for messenger jobs, and I had my assistant. I said, you tell the boss I'm quitting, and I don't want my salary. There was 2 weeks out. I don't want anything. I want to get out. And I walked out with a little briefcase with my, I never forget, I walked up Broadway feeling like the happiest man on earth, that I'm no longer going to work for anybody. That was my idea. Now I'm going to write, do you see? But that was a beautiful walk, looking at all these poor bastards who are working, struggling, selling things, and buying things, you know? But then began my years, 10 years of misery, you know, trying then to sell my work. But as I say, this desire to write must have been strong in me from way back, you know. But I had no confidence in my ability to write. That was the thing. I had absolutely no confidence. Very strange thing. So I began, you know, by writing, I thought I would start, like exercises. I'd write about things I was interested in, people, events. I'd go to meet people. I visited the editor of Funk and Wagnall's dictionary, do you see, and wrote an article, long, beautiful, about words, which was, I sold to Liberty magazine, that 5-cent magazine. They liked me there. They almost gave me a job as assistant editor. But they paid me, and they paid me, oh, that was fabulous. I think I got $300, which was a big sum in those days. But they never printed it. And I would ask every now and then, it's too good, they said. Too good, how do you like that? Finally, I caught on to the idea of, you know, there were like magazines like Snappy Stories and things. You remember those that were like our Playboy thing in a way today? I wrote one or two, had no luck, and I got on to the idea I should send my wife, who was beautiful, send her in with these things. And of course, then they sold. After I sold 2 or 3, I thought, why should I write the new things? I'll go to the back files 10 years, 12 years ago, pull out their own story, and change the beginning and end and the names of the characters, and I'd sell it to them. This is what they loved. It was their own stuff. Always merry and bright. If it was before the war and the thermometer down to 0 or below, if it happened to be Thanksgiving Day or New Year's or a birthday, or just any old excuse to get together, then off we'd trot, the whole family, to join the other freaks who made up the living family tree. It always seemed astounding to me how jolly they were in our family, despite the calamities that were always threatening. Jolly in spite of everything. There was cancer, dropsy, cirrhosis of the liver, insanity, thievery, mendacity, buggery, incest, paralysis, tapeworms, abortions, triplets, idiots, drunkards, ne'er-do-wells, fanatics, sailors, tailors, watchmakers, scarlet fever, whooping cough, meningitis, running ears, chorea, stutterers, jailbirds, dreamers, storytellers, bartenders, and finally there was Uncle George and Tante Amelia, the morgue and the insane asylum. No one knew that Tante Amelia was going completely off her nut, that when we reached the corner, she would leap forward like a reindeer and bite a piece out of the moon, and nobody could think quick enough to stop it. Just like that it happened, in the twinkle of a star. And now I'm going to tell you what those bastards said to me. They said, Henry, you take her to the asylum tomorrow, and don't tell them that we can afford to pay for her. Fine. Always merry and bright. The next morning, we boarded the trolley together and we rode out into the country. If Mealy asked me where we were going, I was to say to visit Aunt Monica. But Mealy didn't ask any questions. She sat quietly beside me and pointed to the cows now and then. She saw blue cows and green ones. She knew their names. She asked what happened to the moon in the daytime. And did I have a piece of liverwurst by any chance? During the journey, I wept. I couldn't help it. When people are too good in this world, they have to be put under lock and key. There's something wrong with people who are too good. It's true Mealy was lazy. She was born lazy. It's true that she was a poor housekeeper. It's true she didn't know how to hold on to her husband when they had found her one. When Paul ran off with the woman from Hamburg, she just sat in a corner and wept. The others wanted her to do something, put a bullet into him, raise a rumpus, sue for alimony. But Mealy sat quiet. She wept. She hung her head. She was like a pair of torn socks that are kicked around here, there, everywhere, always turning up at the wrong moment. And now she's very tranquil, and she calls the cows by their first name. The moon fascinates her. She has no fear because I'm with her, and she always trusted me. I was her favorite. Even though she was a half-wit, she was good to me. The others were more intelligent, but their hearts were bad. Sometimes when she was fired from a job, they used to send me to fetch her. Mealy never knew her way home. And I remember how happy she was whenever she saw me coming. She would say innocently that she wanted to stay with us. Why couldn't she stay with us? I used to ask myself that over and over. Why couldn't they make a place for her by the fire? Let her sit there and dream, if that's what she wanted to do. Why must everybody work, even the saints and the angels? Why must half-wits set a good example? I'm thinking now that after all it may be good for Mealy where I'm taking her. No more work. Just the same, I'd rather they had made a corner for her somewhere. Walking down the gravel path toward the big gates, Mealy becomes uneasy. Even a puppy knows when it is being carried to a pond to be drowned. Mealy is trembling now. At the gate, they are waiting for us. The gate yawns. Mealy is on the inside. I am on the outside. They are trying to coax her along. They are gentle with her now. They speak to her so gently. But Mealy is terror-stricken. She turns round and runs toward the gate. I'm still standing there. She puts her arms through the bars and clutches my neck. I kiss her tenderly on the forehead. Gently, I unlock her arms. The others are going to take her again. I can't bear seeing that. I must go. I must run. For a full minute, however, I stand and look at her. Her eyes seem to have grown enormous. Two great round eyes, full and black as the night, staring at me uncomprehendingly. No maniac can look that way. No idiot can look that way. Only an angel or a saint. When I ran away from the gate, I stopped beside a high wall and burying my head in my arms against the wall, I sobbed as I had never sobbed since I was a child. Meanwhile, they were giving Mealy a bath and putting her into regulation dress. They parted her hair in the middle, brushed it down flat, and tied it into a knot at the nape of the neck. Thus, no one looks exceptional. All have the same crazy look, whether they are half crazy or three-quarters crazy or just slightly cracked. When you say, "May I have pen and ink to write a letter?" they say yes, and they hand you a broom to sweep the floor. If you pee on the floor absent-mindedly, you have to wipe it up. You can sob all you like, but you mustn't violate the rules of the house. A bug house has to be run in orderly fashion, just as any other house. When Mealy stood at the gate with eyes so bright and round, her mind must have traveled back like an express train. Everything must have leaped to her mind at once. Her eyes were so big and bright, as if they saw more than they could comprehend. Bright with terror, and beneath the terror, a limitless confusion. That's what made them so beautifully bright. You have to be crazy to see things so lucidly, so all at once. If you're great, you can stay that way, and people will believe in you, swear by you, turn the world upside down for you. But if you're only partly great, or just a nobody, then what happens to you is lost.
Calling Henry Miller. Calling Henry Miller. Henry, are you there? Are you listening? Can you hear us? You can? Hold on a second and I'll give you Joe. Are you there, Joe? Joey, are you there?
Here I am, Henry. This is a long-distance call from Villers-Seurat. Now, before I give you the lowdown in French, here's Larry again with an important message.
Oh, Henry, what about a Roquefort or Burle with a glass of Clos Vougeot?
And the Cinéma du Quartier.
And a Calvados.
And La Pitotière.
And Tino Rossi.
Collapsible mouth organ.
We want Henry Miller. We want Henry Miller.
I think that when you suffer deeply somewhere and you can't escape, you begin to accept the situation and then you find marvelous things in it. Don't you know? So in the midst of my poverty and suffering and all that, I really discovered Paris, the true French spirit and everything, and got to love it. This was, of course, that's that hard thing to understand, that how can you enjoy being like that right down at the very bottom? And yet I think that is the most important thing that ever happened to me, to be without anything, no crutch of any kind, cut off completely from all help. then have to find it every day, this help to live from day to day. This is a very good thing, you know. You suffer, sure, you're miserable, but it's so interesting, so fascinating. You're so thoroughly alive when you do that. You're living then with your instincts like an animal. And that's a great thing for us over-civilized people to know again how to be a bird of prey or, you know, an animal, just wolfing every meal and begging and being humiliated time and again, accepting it, being pushed down and then bouncing back up again. Each day is a miracle that you get through, do you see? Huh? This is a very wonderful thing. 4 Avenue Anatole France, Clichy, April 1932. Dear Emil, no, I don't want to return to America. Nothing but a catastrophe can make me go back. This is my world, and I knew it long, long ago, and I only regret it took so long to make the decision. What a different being I would have been if at 21 I had gone to the Sorbonne or to Alt Heidelberg or to Sevilla or Madrid, anywhere but City College. However, it hasn't been too late. I will never become a European, but thank God I am no longer an American. I am one of those things you call an expatriate, a voluntary exile. I have no country, no frontiers, no taxes to pay, no army to fight for, and I adore France. It's getting to the point where I will actually have to earn a living.
Dear Mr. Miller, it is my painful duty to inform you that your services will no longer be required. I tell you frankly that you haven't grasped the job. Perhaps you are temperamentally unfitted for a job dealing almost entirely in figures.
I feel now exactly as all the great vagabond artists must have felt. Absolutely reckless, childish, irresponsible, unscrupulous, and overflowing with carnal vitality, vigor, ginger, etc. Always on the border of insanity, due to worry, hunger, etc., but shoving along day after day. Versailles, the Eye of Paris. And it was in those early days that I used to go with him at night all over Paris, helping him carry his equipment and so on. And I got to see a great many parts of Paris I might never have seen through him. He knew Paris thoroughly. And what I remember then is the thing that everybody knows is his eyes. His eyes are really, they protrude like the lens of a camera. You see, he had only begun to take up photography when I met him. He had been a journalist. He had first been a painter. Then he eked out a living by writing for Hungarian newspapers. And then he took up photography. Vous m'avez montré la télé.
Ça, c'est la femme folle. J'ai mis des gauloises parce que comme ça, quand j'ai besoin de cigarettes, je prie à Saint-Sébastien et il me donne.
Très joli. Who is that beautiful? Very much. That's his wife. And I didn't recognize her.
C'est vrai, c'est joli.
Il y a 15 ans, peut-être, huh? He's writing a book, you know, like he did for Picasso. He's writing one. I've never seen any of it.
Et je vais donner après, mais je vais tout donner. Pas maintenant, mais...
Non, mais je me demande, vous écrivez à la main? Non.
Non, aussi à la main. Henri est en train de prendre son petit déjeuner.
Bijou was this fantastic-looking creature, filthy and scaly. Her skin was caked with dirt, and her eyes were heavily black. Her fingernails were filthy. Everything about her was filthy, but she has these marvelous big eyes, and she read your fortune, and she was a character.
I'll show you something. on
Or
the
I
way
may come
from
back
home.
another day.
I
I'm
hope
going to
so.
be here for a few weeks.
Oh, I
Yeah.
want you to come back. I'll do a new painting of you.
Yes. You know, you did one of me, you remember, in New York.
Yes, I did.
You have color print. That's amazing, too, of you, but is that you find room to put your canvas.
I'll bring them over.
Street again, Buford?
First and
Green Street, 181.
Oh, yes, that's right.
181?
181.
What a memory, huh?
Oh, you got very good memory. You always.
That goes back, what?
I have been here now since, night. Oh, by the way, before we go further, anything you might see in here that you want, anything at all, you can have, and I'd like to give it to you. And don't say no to it. Take your time, show you more things. I have a photo hanging
there it is.
Symbol to you.
There it
I want you
is.
to get.
And that's also in these bright colors.
That's right.
Remember?
That's right.
There's sort of a halo around me almost, I felt. Anybody?
That's
Somebody?
Mary Anderson.
And another life of misery begins, but on a different level and with a different ambience entirely. Misery compounded with joy. Here I make the best friends in my life. When we were at Ménilmontant the other day, taking it. Yeah, we looked down, there was a church, and we were told he was born right near that church there, yeah. I had two especially good boon companions who are still alive, still writing, and we are still writing one another. That's Lawrence Durrell and Alfred Perlez, whom I call Alf always.
Well, you remember the very first evening at the Dome, he was sitting there. There was a pile that high of sauces, which you couldn't pay for, you remember? I don't know if you had a room or not, but you were in the dump. That's when I invited you to come to my hotel in the Hotel Central.
Well, then you proposed that I share your little room up there, that hovel of a place. You used to take me
well,
home.
I was in a night shift, you see. You could sleep
That's
in
right.
the night. And when
I
came
used
in,
to tread softly like Smedjikov in your footsteps so that it would sound like one person. And when you would say to the night porter, Perlez, you know, I was marching slowly behind you up the stairs. You remember?
Yeah.
And then you'd leave money on the mantelpiece for me so that I could at least have my croissant and coffee in the morning. You didn't leave enough for lunch because you couldn't. Then began my day, looking for lunch and looking for dinner. I remember with such pleasure my early days in Paris when I walked the streets with empty belly, stopping every few yards to gaze at the paintings, sketches, books, objets d'art displayed in the shop windows. Bread, prime symbol. Americans don't care about good bread. Dying of inanition, go on eating bread without substance, without flavor, without vitamins, without life. The very core of life is contaminated. Think of French bread. So many varieties of bread, all so wonderful. La baguette, la ficelle, le bâtard, le pain de fantaisie, le pain de campagne, le pain de mie, and not least of all, le croissant. And of course, there was a third person, perhaps more important than the two of them in my life, and that was Anaïs Nin. Anaïs had a home at Louveciennes, an old village about an hour distant from Paris by bicycle. Beautiful home on what was formerly the estate of Marie Antoinette. It was a charming place. And you gave me great help, I remember, because you used to go over my early scripts, you remember, and say, look, don't put all of that. That isn't necessary, you know, and you used to have to fight with me about it because I thought it was important. I thought everything was important. Now, you know, if I had the power, I would reduce everything. I would write the smallest books if I could, if I had to. I appreciate them, you know.
But you turned out to be right, because everybody was more worried about what I left out than what I put in.
Ah, that's a good point. Yeah. Clichy was a marvelous working man's quarter with a communist mayor. Here,
Pelez and I finally settled in after a hand-to-mouth existence, hotel to hotel, and spent almost 2 years writing, playing, horsing around. The day that we landed that place, you remember? The first time we really had a place which you could call our own, you know. We arrived there in the late afternoon.
We came with all our luggage, everything ready to move in. And then we looked at the wall. Remember the wall? Crawling with bed bugs. You remember that? They were marching up and down like soldiers, you know.
I lived here 2 or 3 years in Clichy. I came here the first time in 1928. I can see this place going on for another 100 years. What's to stop it, huh? Isn't it right? What's to hinder? They make more transformations. Maybe we'll have some other kind of lighting. Some other kind of demi-mondaine instead of prostitute. And I was sitting over in a corner reading. What am I reading? Julie Ailey-Ford, je crois. Après quelque temps, on fait des, what do you say? Des signaux. Des signaux, oui, signals. And I thought she said, come over to my table. But she meant, I'll see you outside. Elle veut dire, après, n'est-ce pas, on se rencontre dehors. Mais moi, je suis allé à sa table, and she was embarrassed, you know. She didn't want to be thought of as demi-mondaine. And then she said, vous êtes américain, oui. Qu'est-ce que vous avez? J'ai dit, le livre. Français, oui. Je monte le livre, Ailey-Ford. Elle regarde comme ça, elle lit, comme ça, hein? Et finalement, elle dit, il n'est pas français. Il n'est pas français, celui-là. Oui. Well, don't you remember, too, that night the girls were leaving. They weren't exactly girls, huh? And they wanted money. And none of us had any money. And you had a checkbook for an account that didn't exist. And you were writing out a check and handing it to the girl in the bathtub, I remember. And she said, what? That piece of paper? That's no good. What'll I do with that? Don't you know? You see, pendant que nous vivons Anatole, France, Fred, il avait, il a trouvé une très jeune fille. 14 ans. 14? 14. She was wandering in the street, comme perdue. And he rescued her, brought her home to live with us. And après quelques semaines, on frappe à la porte, hein? Et voilà le père et la mère. Et très cultivé, très respectable, oui. Et d'abord, le monsieur dit, c'est très grave, n'est-ce pas? Elle est une mineure. Ça, c'est la prison, gars. Et pendant qu'il parle à Fred, il voit la bibliothèque, the library, Fred, very little library. He sees Goethe, and he sees who else? Kaiserling. Des books, they leave Okru, et they leave comme Goethe, que Fred avait lu, n'est-ce pas? Et il dit tout d'un coup, mais monsieur, comme ça, vous êtes quelqu'un, vous lisez les bons livres, n'est-ce pas? Vous êtes cultivé, comment est-ce que vous pouvez commettre un crime comme ça? Oui, hein? Et alors, finalement, le monsieur, il entend que je tape à la machine. Et Fred dit, excusez-moi, je vais vous présenter mon ami Henri Miller. Alors, Henri Miller, ça ne veut rien dire, mais j'avais une figure assez impressionnante, n'est-ce pas? Un peu vieux et Sérieux? Il dit, qu'est-ce qu'il écrit, le monsieur? Il dit la philosophie, n'est-ce pas? Métaphysique, oui, comme un gourou. C'est ça, n'est-ce pas, monsieur? Et comme ça, Fred était, how do you say, exonéré, non? Exonéré. Il dit, mais attention, ne répétez pas, n'est-ce pas? Si ma fille viendra encore une fois à la prison, n'est-ce pas? It was wonderful. Ah, oui. Avenue Anatole, France, Clichy. Dear Emil, it doesn't go so easily, the watercolor business. This one is a sample of what I can turn out, a sample of my inability to make headway. I just must get some first-hand knowledge, a little idea of the craft, something beside inspiration and enthusiasm. I'm disgusted for the moment. Night before, in despair, couldn't write. Doubts, failure, old age. Morning comes, the bowels move, the earth groans. I don't think about any single thing, but about all things at once. I want to show the world that not all the great surrealists are dead. I want a classic purity, where dung is dung and angels are angels. The Bible a la King James, for example. The glorious, death-dealing Bible that was created when the English language was in flower, when a vocabulary of 20,000 words sufficed to build a monument for all time. Well, here I am. I can write, and I will write, and nobody will deny me. I will write what no man dares to say, and they can take it or leave it, but I think they will take it. But at any rate, I found my voice there in Paris, and I wrote that book, which I guess started all the trouble and the success at the same time. And that was The Tropic of Cancer. It is now the fall of my second year in Paris. I was sent here for a reason I have not yet been able to fathom. I have no money, no resources, no hopes. I am the happiest man alive. A year ago, 6 months ago, I thought that I was an artist. I no longer think about it. I am. In the last few years, one sees quite a few either writings about you or quotations from you about dreams and the dream life. And I feel that they haven't really understood what you mean about this. I don't think you want people to be living in a dream state while conscious, do you, and walking around, or there should be, no. But you mean that the dream has its uses, its effectiveness in life afterwards.
Yes, no, I meant something else. I meant that we could arrive at a state where what we dream at night would be like the blueprint for what we wish to fulfill or to reach. And if we understand the dream, then we know what the secret self is. And then this secret self we can fulfill.
I think one thing that they overlook very much in your writing, especially the diary writing, is that who can be more explicit and realistic than you at the same time? Isn't that right? You have that mixture of the two things. You're able to take this dream thing and the fantasy and then expose it through the characters and the events that appear in the diary. The diary should never give the impression, I imagine, that this is something concocted in an opium state, you know what I mean? And some do look at it that way. They're always asking, did these things really happen? Did she do these things? Do you see what I mean? Isn't that so?
I know.
Is it any wonder that there are so many poet-painters in France? Wherever the eye falls, there is color, irregularity, whimsy, individuality.
together with all the evidences of age and use, the patina of life lived. Even in the simple matter of dress, there is a marked lack of uniformity. As for the shops, they are infinite in variety, as variegated as the proprietors themselves. As for the street itself, there one may still see the old and the bent, the crippled, the half-witted, the mutilé de la guerre, the genuinely demented, the beggars and tramps, the drunkard, pitched against a plenum of colorful, dilapidated walls, windows of every size and description, shaded alleys, cathedrals. Notre Dame rises tomb-like out of the waters. Hideous and charming monuments, strident posters and billboards, chimney pots and black roofs, or pale rose and sienna roofs, vegetables piled sky high and arranged like gems, mangy cats, sad-looking curs, everything imaginable and often unimaginable, all bizarre and nostalgic, thoroughly offbeat. A melange or stew that never fails to whet the appetite of a poet or a painter. After Clichy, I moved into the Villa Sura, where I had a studio and some real comforts. The street itself was famous for harboring many well-known painters, sculptors, musicians. Here, I finished the third or fourth revision of Tropic of Cancer, wrote Tropic of Capricorn, Max and the White Phagocytes, Aller Retour, New York, finished Black Spring, and began the Hamlet letters with Michael Frankel. The street itself was an interesting street. When you think of the names of the people who once lived there, beginning with the corner house, the best one, where Dali had his studio. There was Gromer, there was Lursa. In my house, after Frankel moved out a long time later, Soutine took the place. I could always see you as the very young man who knocked at my door at the Villa Sura. You came in, you peeked in, you put your head in the door, the crack, I can see you. You know, I grabbed you and hugged you. And you'll always remain to me like that. As you get to be 70 years old and I'm 95 or 100, I'll still think of you this way.
I was particularly struck by his greeting because after hugging me, he said, "Let me take a look at you." Then he pulls up my trouser leg and says, "Christ, you're built like a tree." Most original way of being greeted by the chef.
But also I remember that first impression was he was like a boxer. He wasn't exactly a bantam. He was heavier than that, yet he was light. But he had that light-footed quality, agility and everything, and a little bit of pugnacity in his, which he still has in the chin.
If you have to deal with publishers, sir.
Yeah, it was wonderful. He always struck me as a boxer. I do not find it so strange that America placed a urinal in the center of the Paris exhibit at Chicago. I think it belongs there, and I think it a tribute which the French should appreciate. How is a Frenchman to know that what impresses the American in looking at a Pissotière or a Vespasienne, or whatever you call it, is the fact that he is in the midst of a people who admit to the necessity of peeing now and then, and who know also that to piss, one has to use a pisser. I am a man who pisses largely and frequently, which they say is a sign of great mental activity. One likes to piss in sunlight, among human beings who watch and smile down at you, standing behind a tin strip and looking out on the throng with that contented, easy, vacant smile That long, reminiscent, pleasurable look is a good thing. How many times have I stood thus in this smiling, gracious world, the sun splashing over me and the birds twittering crazily, and found a woman looking down at me from an open window. Standing thus with heart and fly and bladder open, I seem to recall every urinal I ever stepped into. To relieve a full bladder is one of the great human joys. I suppose it was no accident that being enamored of the work of Paul Klee, I finally became bosom friends with the painter who could rightfully be called his twin soul. I mean Hans Reichel, whom I got to know soon after my arrival in Paris. If I were limited to knowing only one artist in a lifetime, one who would enable me to discover the purpose and the meaning of art, I would probably say, give me Hans Reichel. Reichel was of the damned, a true poète maudit. Wedded to his art, he lived it day by day, lived for nothing else. It was his misfortune to paint in a manner which reminded one of Paul Klee. How can I help it, he once said to me, if we see the world through the same eyes? Oh, isn't it like entering a little chapel here, isn't it? Huh? Something holy about it, isn't there? Reichel's world was a limited one. It comprised a few, very few, devoted friends. In truth, he hardly ever left the precincts of the 14th arrondissement where he lived. For him, it was sufficient to take a stroll through the Parc Montsouris or the Luxembourg Gardens. He had friends there whom he visited regularly. The birds, the plants, the fishes, the squirrels. He talked to them, and they answered him. A small world, perhaps, but a full and rewarding one. You think that an author, he has definite ideas and plans, and well, you do in a slight way, but you write in order to find out what you're writing about, who you are and why and what for. Do you understand? It's a voyage of discovery. If you begin with all your charts and plans and compasses and everything, it's a dead thing. You get where you want to go, but the object of writing is to not know where you're going. My hatred and rebellion against the society we live in, especially our American society, made me choose foul language, not to shock them so much, because I am disturbed and angry and so on. So all I can say is that shit, fuck, piss, and all that, you know what I mean? Get it out, spill it on them, you know. Where I lived, Auguste Bartholdi. Yeah, that's what I said, a Russian church. Do you know, one of the first things I remember about you is once I'm standing on the Boulevard Raspail trying to read French, and there was vécu, V-E-C-U, and I asked him, what does that mean? And when I learned, you know, that it's the past participle of to live. It's so simple, you know. I only knew beaver, huh? Tell me about your life.
You know what I was doing all my life. I paint pictures, that's all.
Yeah,
I paint pictures.
And religiously, every day.
I'm trying to continue tradition.
Yeah.
And I'm not bothering about doing anything new at all.
Yeah, yeah.
And maybe I'm doing a bit of contribution of my own, all the same.
You know, the one painter I love very much after all the years is, I look at his work with pleasure, is Bonnard.
Bonnard is
who
tremendous.
lived that beautiful, quiet life and did.
Bonnard is tremendous.
Yeah.
And 46, first Salon d'Automne after the war, and Sartre and Giacometti and everybody started, oh, how wonderful. They discovered Bonnard.
Yeah.
Everybody was discovering Bonnard.
Who had already been painting a long time.
Of course. And whoever loved Bonnard knew about Bonnard long before. Bonnard is completeness, full, an open vision on the world, you see, on reality, and it all goes through his eyes, through his vision, and it's pure and it's beautiful.
Yeah. By the way, why don't you pull out something of yours that you like? Something you like, huh?
All this is in the making. I'm doing a lot of things on paper.
On paper now, with oil, you mean?
Oh, yes. I sell a picture unfinished, always.
Really?
My clients buy from me unfinished jobs. They pay me, then I finish the picture for you.
Is that right?
Not before.
Yeah.
There, you see, I'm working pictures.
You know why I mentioned Singer? Because now your work reminds me so much of his writing. You know that? It's like you're inexhaustible in this theme, huh?
The human being we want, and nothing else, the human being. Life, a cow, an animal, a horse, anything. Ask me what I have in my head, I have nothing. All my brain goes into my fingers. The brain is in the fingers, and I have a hell of a time to give a title to a picture.
Yes.
So I'm just the same as an abstractionist. The only difference is that I'm fearfully faithful to life. So there.
It was a tremendous pleasure to get out into the provinces. Every province in France is extremely interesting, colorful, a nation unto itself.
Mountaineers, land people. It's wine country, which makes for some sort of happiness. And it's an authentic sort of country. All agricultural countries where the people live close to and on the land have a kind of bone structure.
It was there that I found people who were lazy and who knew how to talk and how to live, how to do nothing. And it was a great relief after the northern spirit of France.
It's architecturally very beautiful. It's French, which means that the eating is quite better than anywhere else in the world. There's a contentment of the belly.
I much preferred to live down there than to live in Paris or any other city of France.
But there's a metaphysical uneasiness, which is creative. No, I got something rather urgent I wanted to ask you.
Good.
I couldn't sleep last night.
Yeah.
And I took that book about suicide up to bed, and I remembered all our conversations about Nijinsky's madness and so on and so forth. And I wondered, is suicide, or the desire for, a young man's feeling or an elderly man? Does one feel more and more suicidal or less and less as one goes on? I was more at 20 and less now at 50.
That's right.
How did it work with you?
That's the same with me, yeah. Except I could say that now and then there are little interludes. Ça revient. And it's terrible when it occurs later in life, the desire to commit suicide, but it doesn't last as long. You see, when you're younger, you could have this feeling it could go on for weeks at a time, months, do you know what I mean? You're desperate and whatnot. Everything is black. Later in life, it comes quick, sudden, like for no reason, it seems to me. But it also passes more quickly. Oh, that's my feeling, but each one
Did you
has
ever
destiny.
choose a method?
Yes, I had several methods, you know. Yeah, drowning was one. Yes, I tried that once at the beach.
You tried it?
Yeah, I tried taking the pill. You know, I had a friend, a doctor, who gave me the pill to commit suicide. And to make sure that it would work, I opened the windows wide. It was winter. The snow came in. I lay naked on the bed. He must have given me a sleeping pill. I thought he really gave me something to kill me. I took it. I went to sleep immediately. I woke up. The snow was on me, and I didn't even have a cough. Yeah. One of the few places in France where real bullfights are still held. In the arena at Nîmes, a Roman amphitheater where the Christians of old were crucified and fed to the lions. Imagine dying in this glorious arena at 4 in the afternoon in the presence of 100,000 crazy,
Roman sadistic monsters.
When you were driving, did you occasionally select a tree?
No, that I would never want to
Well,
do.
I was talking to somebody the other day, and they said all these plane trees which you love in Provence so much. Oh, I have such trouble, because sometimes when I'm a little drunk and I'm driving, I mentally select one with my eye, and it's so terribly easy. Then I have to slow down. I never had that feeling. Have you?
I've never wanted to do that. I don't want any agony, any maimed limbs and whatnot.
Sure.
No. The pill seems wonderful, or any method that's easy and gentle and so on. Huh?
I never believed people who said that the obsession of death, you remember, that Frankl had and Lornfels, and that you shared that, and I said, no, I didn't think so ever. You played with them in their own terminology, if you want, but you never were very concerned about that.
Yes. Well, I tell you,
about
I think,
destruction, the destruction of the world.
But what they were talking about, really, Anais, was death in life, which so many people can do.
Yes.
Death in life, don't you know, I think.
But you didn't know anything about that.
No, but I become more aware of it all the time, though.
That there are people who are dead in life.
Oh, yes, right. And that's the only death. That's the real death. Not this death when you depart the body, but being dead while you're alive. That's real death, I think. I'll tell you one thing. You got into this I think, through deeply. Psychoanalysis.
Yes.
And from your talk, Eduardo, everybody's talk about analysis and dreams.
And
I began to dream heavily, violently,
and that
every
was those
night.
50 pages.
And then I learned how to wake up without losing the dream. This is an art and a discipline, and I discovered that. I've lost it again, but I can do it if I want. You learn how to wake up. You don't wake up, you don't open your eyes wide right away. And you know you've been dreaming when you wake up. And you close your eyes slowly again, and you hold on to that last thread and go back like into the labyrinth, trace it back. Do you see? And when you got it all together, I'd get up out of bed in my pajamas and go right to the typewriter and record it. And not only record that dream, but all the associations that came up with it. Do you remember, too, that Rank used to say, after a while, analysis will be like vaccinated against it. When so many people have had analysis, there won't be any demand for it anymore, right? Yeah. And our friend, you remember David Edgar, always said that the neurotic of today is the man of the future. At least he's the germ of that man of the future. This neurosis is a healthy thing. I don't know, that's paradoxical, too.
Like a bridge, constantly to life.
Right.
And that the neurotic was like the romantic in the old days. He has a vision.
Yes.
He's only unhappy because he can't fulfill this vision. And you know, and he gets self-destructive. He destroys himself if he can't have what he wants.
Yes.
So it's the same as the romantic.
Or don't you think, too, though, that the most important thing about it is that he cannot adapt to this world, and he should not adapt to it. Since it's a bad world, the world, there are two ways of looking at that. Either you destroy this world, lock, stock, and barrel, or you adjust to it in a way that you are detached from it.
Someone wrote me a very amusing letter from Australia and said that you had rearranged his molecules. You had changed the direction of the molecules, which I thought was a wonderful expression.
No, that's why.
That's being effective. You see, that is a change.
I know.
And that's what fascinates me about analysis, which I didn't find so much in the Oriental religions.
They have in their legends stories of the 7 rounds that you make on Earth or any planet, and then the dead wood. Ibsen had a phrase, but I forget it now. It's like the dead wood remains and rots on this planet, and those who are alive, what is that thing from the Bible? Alive and the quick and the dead. The quick are transported
by, you know, spaceships to another planet. In other words, it's a matter of vision. It's a matter of awareness, opening your eyes, seeing the world differently. After all, the only difference in lives is your point of view, how you look at the world. The world does not change. You change. And how do you change? By your different attitude. Whether you see it from down here like the frog, as Spengler said, or up above like the eagle, or still higher like the gods. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
That's the only difference there is, to me.
Yeah.
Because otherwise everything is the same, yeah. No matter what you touch and you wish to know about, you end up in a sea of mystery. It's a little low, huh? Right? The memo that I wrote to myself today, September the 17th, after a bloody hectic 3 weeks, such as I don't think I've been through in ages. If we get through this bloody business, we can thank all the gods there are, plus the Supreme Being, and Mahakali, Mother of all. What are we here for if not to enjoy life eternal, solve what problems we can, give light, peace, and joy to our fellow man, and leave this dear fucked up planet a little healthier than when we were born. Who knows what other planets we will be visiting and what new wonders will there unfold. We certainly live more than once. Do we ever die? That is the question. In any case, thank God we are alive and of the stars unto all eternity. I would say amen.